What's up guys, welcome to Paul's Hardware. I am back with yet another epic gaming PC build. This time it's Mini-ITX, but I need to start out by acknowledging that it's December 2020, and if you're looking to build a new gaming PC right now, you might be a little bit discouraged because in particular, the newest and most exciting components like the new AMD Ryzen 5000 series processors, the NVIDIA 30 series graphics cards, the AMD Radeon 6000 series graphics cards are all sold out everywhere. And in fact, the sold out situation has gotten so bad that it doesn't just apply to those parts. There's lots of other stuff that is really difficult to find right now too. So while you could theoretically assemble the system I'm putting together today for around $2,100, you're probably not going to be able to do that anytime soon. My apologies there. However, if you just like to watch videos of computers being built, I've got you guys covered today. This computer already has a home lined up for it. I'm building it for my very good friend Chad, and we're going to get to take a first look at a brand new case from Phanteks, the Evolv Shift 2.
Excellent!
This is the part where I would walk you through all the parts I've chosen for today's build, which we're going to get to, but before that, I wanted to look at something else. The computer that Chad's been gaming on for quite some time is actually one that I built on my channel, actually back in November of 2013, so you guys can still watch that video if you're interested. This goes all the way back to before I put up my shelving, and I had kind of a different layout here in the garage, and I hadn't done a lot of the work that I've done now. So Chad's going to be upgrading from an i5 4670K, so that should be a nice upgrade to the 5600X. He had a Z87 GD65 motherboard and a GeForce GTX 780, the Asus DirectCU 2 OC version of that. He also had a Sound Blaster sound card in there, and it was all built in the Fractal Define R4 case. And look, we even installed an optical drive in that system. That shows how old it is. Today's build, just to look at what the prices would be, I assembled on PC Part Picker, and if you're looking here and you're seeing all these like lines here, that means these are products that are not in stock. So not just the CPU and the graphics card, but the memory is not available. The case isn't available, but that's just because it doesn't launch until tomorrow. The power supply is also unavailable, but there's a rough look at what the pricing would be for each of the components that's involved here, and then our total is about $2,125. And now let's go over individual parts. We got the AMD Ryzen 5 5600X 6-core 12-thread processor. This is $300 retail, or that's what it should sell for, although it's sold out everywhere, so it's hard to find it for that price right now. As we move into 2021 though, I think this is going to be the consummate go-to recommended gaming CPU for most people who are building at least a Ryzen-based system. Because for $300 you get 6 cores and 12 threads, and you get all of the single-core performance and other features of the Ryzen 5000 series, which includes Zen 3 microarchitecture and pretty much the best-in-class single-core performance as well as gaming performance. The 5600X is actually the only CPU from the 4 that have launched in the 5000 series that does come with a cooler in the box, but we're not going to use that. We're going to use this Corsair H80i V2 cooler. Our Phanteks case, even though it's Mini-ITX, is somewhat friendly with all-in-one liquid coolers, but you do want a 120mm radiator for that, so especially if you're looking at Corsair, the options there are fairly limited. This is the best and most recent 120mm radiator-based all-in-one liquid cooler from Corsair. However, it does have a downside, which is that it did not ship with an AM4 mounting bracket originally. It only goes with compatibility up to AM3. Newer versions, though, will ship with the AM4 hardware in the box, and I heard that they would also have a sticker on it somewhere, but this one does not have a sticker, but I did open the box and we do have that hardware in there, fortunately. So the only other question that I'm going to answer, and this might answer some of you guys' question if you're thinking about this case and you want to do an AIO in it, of will this cooler fit in that case, and that's going to be all about the tubing length, and we're a little bit more limited because you don't have quite as much flexibility coming off of the CPU block for this one, but we'll see once we get it installed. Also from Corsair, we have our memory kit. This is a 32 gig kit, and that was specifically requested by Chad. He wanted a 32 gig kit. I'm recommending DDR4 3600 speed memory if you're going to pair it with Ryzen. And this is Vengeance RGB Pro memory, which means it has nice RGB lighting on top too, which is of course going to make everything faster. It's CAS latency 18, and this kit, when it is available for sale, sells for around $150. Final item from Corsair is the SF750 750 watt 80 plus platinum rated power supply, and this is part of the reason why Mini-ITX builds are going to be a little bit more expensive. Power supplies are already a bit overpriced right now, and for an 80 plus platinum small form factor power supply, this one goes for around $200, which is maybe $80 or $100 more than you would need to spend for an equivalent just standard ATX 750 watt power supply. That said, if you're willing to pay the money, it has excellent efficiency on this unit. It is fully modular. It is 80 plus platinum. That's the efficiency right there, and it has nicely black sleeved cables for the entire kit, so that's cool too. For our storage configuration, we have 3 terabytes total, starting with the WD Black SN750 NVMe M.2 2280 SSD. So this is going to be really fast for the operating system Windows, and it should be able to store a decent amount of games on there as well. And then we're supplementing that with a 2TB SATA SSD, and that is the Crucial MX500. This one has actually been on sale for less than $200 recently, so that's a nice deal if you guys are looking for deals on stuff that you might actually be able to buy. Our motherboard and graphics card are both from Gigabyte. This is from their Aorus line, B550i Aorus Pro AX with the B550 chipset. We're going to get out of the box compatibility with the 5000 series CPUs, of course, and we're also going to get PCI Express 4.0 capability through the only PCIe slot that's on the board, as well as for our main M.2 NVMe slot. Now, this is not a PCIe 4.0 NVMe SSD, but that's okay. The capability is there for the future anyway, if Chad ever decides to upgrade. We also have, of course, an RTX 3080, and apart from the $1,000 plus options from Radeon and NVIDIA, this is the best graphics card you can get right now. Of course, you can't really get it right now because they're sold out everywhere. The 3080 is supposed to cost $700, and we're not sure if it's ever going to come back down to that price once stock becomes more available. The list price for this one right now is $750. But this is the gaming OC 10G variant from Gigabyte. Comes with a little bit of a manufacturer overclock out of the box, and just a beastly graphics card to install in the system. Finally, of course, we have the Phanteks Evolv Shift 2. This is V2 of the Evolv Shift. I have not built in the original one, so we'll get this out of the box in just a minute and take a closer look. So those are the parts I'm building with today, guys, and you should be able to find links to most of these down in the video's description. Also, want to point out, this is not going to be a step-by-step tutorial video. For that, check out my beginner's guide to building a gaming PC playlist, where I have several videos that will walk you through step-by-step everything like CPU installation and other details you might need to know if you're a first-time builder. I'm going to be pointing out unique things about this specific build as I go along, things that jump out to me as special or different. I'm excited to see how all this comes together, so let's get building. All right, let's get a closer look at our case here, the Phanteks Shift, which is a unique chassis. It's Mini-ITX, and it has this sort of monolithic design where it's very tall, but it still maintains a fairly small form factor if you're just looking at the amount of room it takes up on the desk. The version I have here is anthracite gray. It's also available in satin black, and I have the Air version, which is going to cost $100 MSRP. There's also a tempered glass version, which is $110 MSRP, and both of them are available in either the gray or the black finish. Up here on the top is how you access everything internally in the case. It's just got a little push button there that lifts up the top, and up here you can also see power reset button and an LED control button, because this does have an integrated digital RGB LED controller. If your motherboard doesn't have that capability, you can use the case to control that, and you can control the RGB lights with that. And that is actually where the I/O for your motherboard is going to be, right there at the top of the case. So you can probably tell this is not like your standard ATX layout for a case. And because you're going to have a bunch of cables in this top area here is actually designated to be like the cable routing and management area. On the plus side, if you need quick access to some of the I/O on your motherboard, it will be right there for you. Just pop open the top lid of the case. That can be challenging for clean cable management outside the case though, so that's why they've designed this back panel here with one pass-through up here for cables that maybe you just need to pass through up here or that are too short to reach the bottom. And then down here you have a smaller gap where you can pass them out, and this is also where the extension for plugging in your power supply goes. You do not get a Type-C port on this case, but hopefully your motherboard has that, and hopefully that's accessible at the top, which is maybe if you really need that port. But you do get a couple USB 3.0 ports down here at the bottom, covered by some little rubber protective tabs. So that's useful because you'll be able to use it for the USB 3.0 like header on your motherboard if you had one. That said, they're down here at the bottom, so not the easiest to access location. The side panels here are this nice nylon mesh, which does allow a decent amount of air to pass through while also, staying relatively durable. You can see that you can see through that a little bit, and probably more so once I get some RGB lights inside. But all four of these panels come off, and in order to do that, all you gotta do is pop open this top cover, and then you've just got some captive thumb screws, a couple here for that side panel, a couple more for this side panel, and then down there for the front and rear panel, and up here as well. The mesh side panels are a little bit easier to get off than the front and back ones, but I did get them all removed, and there's a look. This is a 3mm anodized aluminum for the front and back, which has a nice, very quality feel. Up here on the front is a 2.5-inch drive caddy that can hold 2 drives, and you can actually reposition this up to here if you so desire, and you could, of course, purchase another one of these from Phanteks if you wanted to add more 2.5-inch drives. You might also be able to tell that this is a drive mount here, so you can fit a 3.5-inch drive in this location. Cable management in this case is just going to be a little weird because things are in positions that you wouldn't necessarily expect, but Phanteks has placed some strap tie downs in various locations to help you out with that. There's a single 140mm fan pre-installed in the case, although you can add others. In particular, you might want to add one down here at the bottom. You can do a 120 or a 140 right there. That will give you the kind of chimney style airflow, which pulls air from the bottom and pushes it up over components and then exhausts it out the back right there. You got a mount right here for the all-in-one radiator, so I'm going to see if I can do a push-pull configuration there. If not, I might have to just use a single fan, and then this is where the SFX power supply mount is also. So although it seems like there's a decent amount of space down here in this lower chamber, once the power supply is installed and the radiator, it's going to fill up pretty quickly. Also on this side of the case, you have a PCIe ribbon extension cable. This one is passed through there because it needs to curl around to plug into the motherboard, but back here is where your graphics card would plug in, and then the graphics card is going to hang vertically right here. So this is one of the reasons why this is a good case for this type of build with something like an RTX 3080, because they do use a decent amount of power. They are larger cards. Most of the aftermarket models are at least 2.5 slots, if not more than that. And even though this is a Mini-ITX case, you can still fit, I think up to, they said like 2.9 slot cards right in here. So we have a fairly large card in our Gigabyte RTX 3080 Gaming OC, but I'm pretty confident it will fit right here. And then if we flip the case around, this is the area where your motherboard would be installed. The cable for the graphics card would wrap around and plug into your single slot right there. So we get to see if I'm able to wedge all the hardware that I have lined up into this case. Oh, and yeah, if you do install the intake fan down there at the bottom, it does come with a removable dust filter. So I was getting everything out of the retail boxes and getting set up to set up our core components, motherboard, CPU, and everything, and I realized a couple things. First off, nice work on this motherboard, Gigabyte. This is the B550i Aorus Pro AX, and it just has a very solid, substantial feel to it. I like the overall design, the sort of the gray and darker gray and black. It has a beefy heatsink to go on top of your potentially M.2 NVMe PCIe Gen 4 SSD right there, and it's got a really clean looking backplate on the back, and we might actually be able to see that a little bit through this build as well, which might be cool. It also has 802.11ax Wi-Fi built in, which is a nice feature to have on a Mini-ITX board where expandability might be a little bit more limited. The only thing I think it's missing is a USB 3.2 Gen 2 front panel header connector, but since the case doesn't have that, and since in this case the I/O is going to be oriented upwards, where you will have access to a Type-C port anyway, so I think we'll get by just fine. The thing that I encountered second, though, was this. My RTX 3080 box, which is empty, and there's a reason for that. When I tested this card, when I did some comparison testing across several of the RTX 3080s that I had, I took it apart so I could get a look at the back of the graphics card and the capacitor situation back there. You remember back when the biggest issue we were having with graphics cards was MLCC versus SP caps that were used on the back of these 3080s? Anyway though, before we move on, I should probably put this card back together. With the graphics card reassembled, I was able to do a test fit here. It's just in the PCI bracket right now. It's not connected on top, so it will sit a little bit further into the case even. But look at that. Even with this massive RTX 3080 here, we can fit it. There's actually plenty of room. I have decided to supplement the airflow situation with one more fan to make use of the fan mount at the very bottom of the case, just to pull in air from below. And for that purpose, going to add more RGB, because why not? We got the Phanteks SK series SK140 here. This is a 2-pack, but I'm only going to use one of them. Wait, no, it's 3-pack. Ta-da! Build is coming together now, and I have gone ahead with a few things like trying to connect up the power supply cables to the motherboard, the 24-pin down here and the 8-pin which is up here, which I have just enough length to sort of go around the fan here. I did get the power supply installed in the bottom though, with the extension plugged in there at the back, and the thing that I'm still not 100% sure on is with the cables here and everything, am I going to have enough room up there for this big fat radiator as well as a fan attached to it? So that's what I'm going to plug in next and see if it fits. All right, let's see if I can get this radiator in here. So as you can hopefully see, I've got it installed here with the fan on this side, and there's actually 3 positions, mounting positions. You can put this in 1, 2, 3, and you can also slide it a little bit left to right, which is important because if you have the tubes coming out on this side, then you're probably going to have a bulge off of where your 120mm rad is, and you need to be able to push that in enough so that the side panel can get on. Unfortunately, with this particular cooler, the tubes are quite fat and they're coming straight off of here, so they're immediately conflicting with the power supply, and I would need to angle these upward somehow and then also tuck them into the little groove right there in order to get the pump and block unit up to where my CPU is. The reason I put the fan on this side was because I was worried about it conflicting with the cables over here, but I think what I need to do now is take these cables and kind of redo them and see if I can tuck more back behind the power supply on that side while not conflicting with where the graphics card goes. Then I can put the fan on this side of the radiator, get the radiator back and that way a little bit more, and that might give me enough clearance to angle those tubes up where they're supposed to go. Jumping ahead, I just did what I said I was about to do, and here's the results. It's greatly improved things, especially rerouting the cables. I don't know if you can tell, this is where the graphics card is going to go, but there is some space back behind here, so I just sort of passed that back behind where the power supply is to give me a little bit more clearance between the fan and the power supply cables. I'm going to have to be very careful that nothing conflicts with this as I continue to build, but that does seem to provide enough clearance there for me to angle these cables up and get them tucked just behind the power supply right there. It's a pretty tight angle, so it's definitely not ideal, but if you're wondering if this would work, at this point I think yes it will. I have a bunch of cables and stuff I want to connect and plug in before I get this actually mounted onto the CPU and everything, but just to show you guys how this works with tucking the cables up. Part of these accessories is this metal plate right here, and there's actually magnets on the ends, and the way this works is you sort of feed it up under here. It should go down and kind of set into place. It tucks into these tabs right here. And that holds the tubing where it should be, at least for this lower section, and that will allow me to then orient this hopefully where I need it to go and get that mounted. But we'll do that in a little bit. I've plugged in a lot of stuff, front panel connectors and USB and everything. This area right here is sort of meant to be a little bit of a cable management area, so because it will be covered a little bit by this panel once that's installed. At this point though, I need to mount the CPU cooler, and I also need to install the graphics card. I think I'm going to do the graphics card first, even though it's awkward to have this hanging off of here. I did a reality check of the manual, and you're actually supposed to remove this bracket in order to install the GPU, because you need to secure it. And in order to do that, you remove these 2 screws, as well as one from this side, which has been covered up a little bit. So I need to kind of find it back there. There we go. Aha. Cool. Incidentally, in the manual, they want you to do this before you plug it into the motherboard, but I'm just going to try to install it like this. All right, so the graphics card is installed, and that is actually a pretty cool setup that they have going there for it, because I don't know if you could tell, these top screws are on rails here, so the card can actually be shifted to the left or to the right depending on the size of the graphics card. You also have the option to flip the GPU if you want to, depending on the setup, and I think that's also for the, depending on whether you have the Air version that is just going to have mesh right here, or whether you're going to have tempered glass, because you might not want the fans right up against the tempered glass. So at this point, I'm getting really close to being finished. I mainly have to wrangle in this AIO pump block and get the tubing routed into some sort of reasonable configuration. If you're wondering how I have the fans set up on this build, the fan for the AIO down there is going up to the CPU fan header. There are actually 3 fan headers on this motherboard. One is the CPU fan header, there's another one down here in the lower left, and I have a splitter on that, which is going out to the bottom intake and the top exhaust. And then they actually have a different type of plug right there, but it is still a fan header. You just need to use this adapter with it, so I'm going to use that for the control for the pump. So here it is, guys, the build as it stands, assembled for the most part, and we have some very important moments of truths now to get figured out. One, of course, is going to be, with the tubing here and everything, are the side panels going to go back on okay? So let's answer that question right now. Rear panel's good. Front panel's also good. Oh, that's a bit too tight on there, isn't it? Okay. All right, these front and rear panels do not always behave, but what I did was I added an extra zip tie right there, which is holding down these front cables. I was just tightening it up a little bit, but those need to have a little bit of give on them in order for this to be able to open up properly. So now that I know that, bada bing, mesh side panel number 1 and mesh side panel number 2 is touching the tubing. Okay, I'm gonna use my trick, laying it on its side. See? All right, let me screw some of these down. They're a little finicky when they're not screwed in. For real this time. There we go. Now it's perfect, right? Perfect. It's not even a bulge. I don't mind a bulge, but there is no bulge. Well, Mini-ITX builds do tend to be a little bit more challenging because they're different and they're small, and you're working in a small space, and especially with a setup like this where you have visibility from a lot of different angles, you might spend a little bit more time on cable management and getting everything as good as it can be. So that, I think, is why I have taken a little bit longer with this build. Also credit to Phanteks with the Evolv Shift, the original version, and I guess continued with V2. They wanted to do a layout that was different than a lot of the typical ATX layouts, but also hopefully functional. And although I'm not gonna have time for any testing on this today, let me know if in the next few days before I deliver this to Chad, you guys would like to see some quick testing results, because I'm gonna get it set up with Windows and everything. We do appear to have some RGB lights on. Oh, that's the memory. I'm not sure which side to show to you guys when I turn it on for the first time. Let's start with this side. All right, here we go, power button. Seems to be working. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's glorious. It has a bit of RGB, but it's not over the top. I considered briefly swapping the other 2 fans with RGB versions of fans to add more lighting to this build. I decided not to, but let me know if you guys think that would have been a better choice. I think as it is, we want a quiet system, we want a powerful system, and I'm pretty confident that this will meet those requirements. I will get some shots here to show you guys the finished build, the interior with the side panels off. With the side panels on, the mesh allows you to see through a little bit, but without lights behind there, you don't see too much. Overall, I think it's a really nice, clean looking build that came together really well, and the case is really well designed. There's a lot of little thoughtful aspects to it, like the slide rails for the GPU mount and the extra magnetic cover that they put to cover up the little bit of cable management area that's visible by the motherboard. I would say that the Corsair H80i is probably not the best all-in-one liquid cooler to drop into this build, simply because the tubing is so thick and it's not very easy to manipulate the tubes, especially right where they come out of either the radiator or the block. It is doable though, so hopefully this will confirm compatibility for some of you guys out there. That is gonna wrap it up for this video though, you guys. If you enjoyed it, definitely hit the thumbs up button. And before you head out, check the links down in the description, including a link to my store at paulshardware.net, where you can buy shirts and mugs and pint glasses and all sorts of other merch. There is a sale going on for the month of December, so make sure you take advantage of that. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this build. Thank you for watching once again, and we'll see you next time.